The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Keep your mission on your mind and your mind on your mission. This is Mission Minded with Michael Coleman and Tony Kurre.
Here we go, Mission Minded. Keep your mind, your mission, your mind. It's a great show. We just started about 3 or 4 weeks ago along with Michael Coleman. I am Tony Kurre. That Tony Kurre from radio days, the last 30 or 40 years. And, of course, Michael Coleman's been working in and around the great state of Alabama, giving great service work pretty his entire life. We've been talking about business shows on Mission Minded on Tony Kurre Radio. Then we come over here to 101.1. The truth, and now we're doing it through the lens of Jesus Christ, because everything should be done through the lens of Jesus Christ, whether it's business or anything else. And today we're talking about graduating and what seniors can expect in the job market getting into 2026. But before we do that, we always start with a prayer, and I'd love, Michael, if you bless us, please.
Absolutely, Lord. We stand in awe of you and all your graciousness and goodness and perfection. And Father, your light clearly shows us through your word and through the Spirit how inadequate of a people we are. We're fallen. We still struggle in the flesh in so many ways, and yet you have seen fit to impute your righteousness to us. And Father, you've called us to be your hands and feet in so many ways, and I just pray we be attentive to that, we be devoted to that mission, and we do it in a way that reflects your glory. So I pray we take a back seat and that you be glorified and amplified in the things we say and do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Very good. We're going to get into an interesting show here today. And again, a lot of these things are happening because they're in and around our lives. I know you have kids. I got kids. I got a kid who is a senior this year at Oak Mountain. He'll continue to do something called the Falcon Flight at the University of Montevallo for special needs kids. I'm super excited for him in that. And then, of course, my oldest son is a junior now at Clemson. His last day of school will be 2 weeks from this Friday. I know the University of Alabama, their last day is a week from this Friday. I cannot believe the school's almost over for our universities already. And we've already had that conversation. I'm like, honey, what are you thinking now? You know, usually in 8th or 9th grade, they start asking questions like, what do you want to do with your life? This goes beyond the 2nd and 3rd grade, I want to be an astronaut or a veterinarian questions. These are like, what do you really want to do with your life, right? Yeah. And so I knew he wanted to get involved in some type of sports management, sports ownership, sports agency, sports. It's got to have something to do with sports. He loves the live sports environment. He is just really good at seeing things that other people aren't. He feels the room. He can read a really good room. He knows how to promote things, and he's just really good at that. And so I asked him just a couple days ago, hey, you're a junior now. What are you expecting to do? And you know, he's they have all these different industries coming in, your junior and senior years, where you can go resume build and talk to different businesses and internship and all of, and he's gotten involved in a lot of things are sports related. But the one thing he did expect was, and we talked about this the other day, there's a lot of people in college that think they're going to get out and all of a sudden they're going to have a $150,000 job waiting on them the day they graduate. And I hope that's true for the majority of people listening to this program. And if you've got a little one or a big one coming out of college, I hope that's the case. What we want to do, based on the limited work experience I've had as a business owner the last 5 or 6 years, but I've been in the workforce since I was 12. And you, who have pretty much worked every facet of everything from business ownership to CEOs to you name it, you've done it. We kind of want to help kids, parents, in our own expertise, in our own way, to shoot you straight and kind of tell you what you can do to set yourself up or your child up for the best possibility when they graduate, when they get out. Maybe they are a sophomore, maybe a junior. This is a show you could talk about maybe in a year from now. But if you do have one leaving high school and maybe they're not going to college, maybe they're getting into some type of skill work. We've talked a lot about that. Or maybe they're going to college. Or maybe, like my kid just said, he wants to go to grad school. I'm like, okay, that's something that 3 years ago I would have totally thought there's no way he's going to grad school. And all of a sudden he's talking about it. And I think it's because I can't believe I'm saying this. I think he enjoys the school atmosphere. I think he really enjoys. He's doing really well. He's on the president's list, the dean's list. I think he feels it's taken him a while to feel comfortable in his environment. I think that's why he moved away. He kind of forced his hand a little bit. I'm really proud of him for that. He's gone through some anxiety and depression issues. He is just he's been unbelievable. He has just knocked it out of the park. And I think he wants to further his education. I said, honey, I think that's fantastic. Now we got to figure out how we're going to pay for that. But when you're getting straight A's, there's a lot of help out there. So we may be in good shape. So, what would you say, right off the top here, what is the biggest perception you think that seniors in college right now have getting into the 2026 workforce? What do you think the biggest misnomer is or misunderstanding there is getting in? You've been there, you've done it, you've hired people out of high school, you've hired people that are 65 years old. What do you think the biggest misconception is for these seniors coming out this year?
Yeah, I think you touched on it, is that they think they're going to be able to step right into a career job. And I just think their expectations, if they've never been involved in the workplace, their expectations are they're going to enter into a position that's going to give them the same freedom and luxuries that they've been accustomed to. So I know this isn't everybody, but let's just say the average middle upper class kid goes off to college, goes to high school, and they're like, okay, you play a lot of sports, parents don't make them work. Not saying whether that's right or wrong. Every parent has to determine what's the right fit for their child. They go off to college, and they're not required to work at college oftentimes, and it's just like, no, I want you to focus on your education, and they get through the education process, and you go through that, and even if you finish early, you may be a stud in the classroom, but the reality is, the classroom, unless you're going through, and even then, like if you're getting a technical degree, so let's say you're getting an engineering degree, it's very challenging. It's a necessary thing to get those 4 years. But when you step into your first job as an engineer, and I have several young men over the years and young women, but engineer is predominantly male. You have a lot of young men go into that, and when they go into their job, they're being told, okay, I understand what you learned in college. You learned some tools, you learned some things. Now I'm going to really teach you what practical engineering, when you get in there, and you're going to have to do some things. And it's like my grandson is fixing to enter in the 12th grade in the fall, and he was just telling me the other day he'll have already an associate's degree, because all in high school he's gone to junior college and done all these things, had a lot of practical skills, but he wants to go to the University of South Alabama, and because he ultimately wants to own his own business, and but it's very hard to explain to him. You'll be introduced to some skills, but you're not going to learn how to run a business in college. You'll learn some basic accounting. You'll learn some basic business principles. You might learn some basic marketing skills. But the reality is, when you get out of college, most places are going to start you at an entry-level position, and you're going to have to then prove and earn respect and grow in that position, because nobody is going to just hand it to you. And the real challenge behind that is most people go, yeah, that's no big deal. Well, kids today are not near as prepared to go backwards, because they're used to being able to go when they want to go, have what they have. Not a lot of kids are being told no. They buy what they want when they want it. And then when you get out on your own, it's a whole different thing, because now you're like, wait a minute, I'm only making this, and I have to pay the rent. I have to pay the utilities, which now I have to start making some choices. I can't afford to go out anytime I want to. I'm going to have some discipline and probably, I'll even say most kids adapt very well. But it's a real challenge because you may be the smartest kid or feel like you're the smartest kid in the classroom, or you may be a great athlete and you're like just like in high school, you're the cat's meow, and then you go to college and you're that, and then you get into a real world, and you have to be ready to start usually at the bottom and prove yourself. There are exceptions. You get hired into a family business. You go to college and you come in and you're going to get probably a little bit higher level of responsibility than maybe you should, or that maybe is wise. But you do that because you've had some, your father, your mother, whatever is giving you those connections. And again, nothing wrong with that. But the average kid is really, I think, ill-prepared as a whole to face what life has to offer versus, let's say, when you and I were coming up.
Yeah, do you think that, and I got some really interesting numbers I want to throw by you here in just a second. Do you think now, I'm thinking back, if I was a senior right now, I remember they were asking the question, I actually wanted to be an engineer, like a conductor engineer. And so whenever someone say, well, what do you want to be? I'd say an engineer, and I meant of a train. And that all the way for like my freshman high school years, I love trains. And I thought, and my dad was like, worked in a job where he was by himself as a newspaper distributor. He said, you will not work on a train. You will not drive a truck. You need to be around people. I'm not going to allow you to be in that type of job environment. And I said, okay. But so I didn't say engineer, and people were like, oh, that's great. Well, mechanical engineer? Wait, no, I'm like, no, an engineer of a train. They would kind of laugh.
Yeah.
I don't remember specifically thinking to myself, this is what I want to do with my life. Now, I was already working in radio. When I was 13, 14 years old, I was making my first paycheck when I was 14, $13,397 a year, thank you very much, written on the back of a napkin. And so I was already, and I was working, KFC, and I was doing the Money Room at Kings Island, and I was working some other things as well. But I was already working radio, and that was kind of like I didn't even know if that was something you could go into as a career. I knew how much fun it was, but I didn't think it was going to be something that certainly was going to satisfy or validate my financial existence for the rest of my life like it has. I've been just so incredibly blessed that it's grown into enough that I think I've shared the story. I was in Louisville, Kentucky in 1986. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was on the radio, and I had called my mom, and I said, Mom, I had 2 years of college at Xavier University already complete, and I was taking communications because it was one of a few schools that had a radio station at the college. WVXU is known as one of the best college radio stations in the country. And then I was taking a minor in business communications. I figured I could find something between those two, if not together. And I called her up and said, listen, I said, this radio thing, man, is not for me. I didn't really like the path I was going down. I started hanging out with some shady characters. It was rock and roll. And I mean, it was fun, but I was like, it was just 24 hours a day, and I needed nothing. And I said, I want to move back home, and I want to finish up my school and see what my career path looks like. And she said, come on. And she was so happy. She started crying. And my dad got on the phone. Are you coming home? And he was so happy. He was like, oh, this is wonderful, blah, 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 blah. So I hang up the phone, and it was Sunday. So I said, I got a meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and I'm going to go in and tell my boss tomorrow I'm going to give my 2 weeks. And I said, I'll be home within 2 weeks. And she said, great. Well, I hang up the phone, and we had request lines, and the request line was ringing, and I picked up the phone, and I said, 96 QMF, what can I do for you? And this guy says, my name is Lee Kurre. I'm a program director for some radio stations up in the Midwest, and I'm starting a brand new station, a classic rock station. I was listening to you while I was driving through Louisville, Kentucky, and I thought, man, you would sound perfect on my new radio station. I mean, this was like 3 seconds after I just hung up with my mom. And I said, well, where's the station at? He goes, well, I'm from St. Louis, but it's going to be in Birmingham, Alabama. It hadn't had a classic rock station down there in 6 or 7 years. We're going to blow the doors off. We're starting on Christmas Day of this year. This was about 2 months out. And I want you to do afternoons for me. And at that time, I was making $20,000. I just asked for a $1,200 raise, which comes out to about $25 a week. And they said no. I was number one in my time slot. I had the best listened to show in rock radio history in Louisville, Kentucky, and they said no to a $1,200 raise. Okay, well, this is what I'm dealing with. It was a one-time owner guy. Dr. John Page Otting. I'll never forget it. And so I said, what's it pay? And he goes, $30,000 a year. And I said, for afternoon drive, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do afternoon drive because I could sleep in and I could work at night. And he said, afternoon drive, 3 to 7, $30,000. And I took the job on the phone that second. I said, I'm in. Tell me what I need to do. He said, I'm going to give you directions. I need you to be down here by Wednesday so you can meet the people, blah, 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 blah. The job is yours. And so I picked up the phone and I called my mom back and I said, Mom, and she had already gone into my bedroom and already cleaned out the clothes. She had set the dresser up. She was getting a brand new mattress. She was doing everything to make me welcome home, and she had called the neighbors. And I was like, oh, no. And I said, Mom, I've got some news for you. And she goes, what? I said, I'm not only am I not coming home, but I'm actually moving another 350 miles further away to Birmingham, Alabama. And she said, you're kidding me. And I mean, I broke her heart. And I said, I'll be in touch. I'll let you know. I said, this is just it. But that's what happened, man. I went from quitting my job. I was going to change my job. So I pulled up some interesting numbers in prepping for the show today. The average U.S. citizen will have somewhere between 12 and 15 jobs in their lifetime. And that goes all the way back to, when you're working in the service industry, I'm assuming your first job at McDonald's or whatever. So think about that, 12 to 15 jobs. It sounds like a lot, but it really isn't when you go back and look. What's crazy is nearly 37% of all people changed their career path completely after their first job post-graduation. So 37% of people, roughly 4 in 10, went to college for 4 years, went and found this job, got this job, and were so distraught, didn't like it. It wasn't what they thought it was going to be, didn't want to put the time in, didn't pay what they thought it was going to be. There's a multitude of different reasons, but decided to change their career field completely. Now, I'm not talking about, hey, I'm in this career field and I don't like this business, so I'm going to go work for a competitor. I'm talking about changing your career field completely, which to me just absolutely blows my mind. I would not have thought that number would be that high.
Well, I just in my own personal life, I have a lot of teachers, some college professors. My uncle, my cousins were college professors, but I've known several people throughout that who said, "I'm dedicated. I want to teach. I want to do that," and they get into teaching, and they absolutely become distraught because they start off with this vision that, like in Mayberry, they're going to go into a class and students are going to listen and that you're going to influence them and help them grow and that they're going to look back on you the rest of their life with fondness rather than the display that we have. It doesn't even matter if you're in a wealthier school because the wealthier you are, tends to be the cockier the kids are. Yeah. And the more sarcastic and they push back, you get a different type of pushback typically in the urban schools, but no matter where you go, you just don't find that same level. And my daughter, I have a daughter who's a college professor, and I have a daughter who teaches high school, or who teaches middle grades. But there's so many people that I know that were like, yeah, I went to college 4 years. I got my teaching degree. I passed the praxis. I go into teaching. And within 3 years, I'm like, I'm out of here. I even know one person that did it 1 year and they said, I'm out. And that's not surprising at all. And then they end up, now it's not because of just the kids or the state of education. I mean, some of them are like, hey, I'm being forced to teach things that I don't value or that I don't agree with. So it's not just one reason, like, oh, the kids are horrible. But yeah, there's all sorts of people that have gone into it. I think what's probably more common is you start thinking you're going to like something based on people telling you. So you, for instance, you may love a dog and you go, you know what? I love my dog so much. I want to go to vet school. And so you may are become certified as a vet assistant or whatever that process is. Then you get in there and you realize popping anal glands and all that stuff ain't all it's cracked up to be.
No,
It's
no, it's not.
So you're like, wait a minute, this isn't the same as just sitting around loving on my dog.
Yeah.
So people can change careers all the time, and lots of times it's because we evolve as people. Our interests change, our goals change, and so a lot of people say, they get through college, or they, just leave high school and they get into the workforce because they think this is the path I want, and then they get to experience and they go, you know what? I misjudged this. This is not lining up, or I'm not getting the satisfaction that I want. So then they turn and pursue something else. And the good thing about our country is lots of times people can do resets. I mean, there's people 40, 50 years old that are like, hey, I'm no longer viable in this market. So I begin to retrain and get qualified in other places. And when you step into those new places, you might have to start lower because it's a new career path. But if you take the same characteristics that made you successful in the other one and apply them there, my whole thinking is, I used to tell people this all the time. There are certain careers that absolutely you need to go to college for. You need that special skill set. It requires a certain amount of intelligence and problem solving, all those kind of things. But there are so many jobs that I'm just like, give me somebody that listens or that's coachable and desires to learn and will do what I'm instructed. You can almost teach any job. I mean, there are people. I knew this one gentleman back in the day. He wasn't an engineer, but by the time he got hired on with the Alabama Transportation Department, and he just started taking on more responsibility, and he began to learn things, and a lot of things that were reserved for people with that special degree or skill set. He didn't have that, but he was still in charge of doing those things because he just learned, and he was very well respected. He now, in today's world, you don't even get that opportunity like you did back in the day because you have these education requirements. But I do say this though. I want to encourage, if there's any young people or any parents out there whose kids are getting ready to go to college. I still think college is very valuable, but you definitely need a strategy. When you need to look down the road, and there's high demand fields like in healthcare, engineering, certain things in IT, and then educate yourself and help your child know what is a reasonable path. Start setting those expectations from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So I say, if you're going to college, go with a purpose. At our last week at our Rotary meeting, we had the Chancellor of Auburn University of Montgomery come and speak to us. And so at the end of it, I asked him, I said, in higher education, a lot of people are saying, I don't want to go spend $100,000 and get out and then have to start at an entry level somewhere. But you don't see that with the higher skill stuff. What you see typically is people who get these liberal arts degrees. Now, as he pointed out, and rightly so, if you have higher aspirations, so for instance, you want to go to law school, you might get your undergraduate in political science or something, because it's really just a stepping stone to get into law school or to get into medical school or higher education. But people who go to school and they walk out with a degree, sociology, psychology, I'll even say less specific. You get into gender studies, and then you get out and you realize, there's not a job market for that. There's not a high demand for it. And so it's not like you can go to any city you want to and there's going to be tons of those jobs there. And so you really got to go to college with a strategy and a purpose to be successful.
You bring up a great point. I think a lot of times people think that just because you go to college for 4 years and you'll end up doing what you went to college for, it's a waste of time. It's never a waste of time. You've met a ton of people. Hopefully you've done a lot. I've told my son, network, man, network. Find the smartest kids in your class and network. Live with them. Have lunch with them, eat dinner with them, get their phone numbers, know their families, travel with them, whatever it is. I see so many people who are successful, including my brother-in-law, who's an attorney. He is a land attorney, and he has worked with all these different individuals who own businesses, run businesses, buy land, are in the stock market, and they all work together. All 6 of them each have their own jobs to do to make it. And it's a thing of beauty to see how their networking works together. It really is incredible. Roughly, according to Pew Research, roughly 49% of Americans say that they enjoy their job. 34% highly satisfied. And then, roughly 36% say they don't like their job at all, which is a little higher than I thought it would have been. We used to have 3 jobs growing up, and it was like, wow, it was hard to have 3 jobs. Not only because there's only 24 hours in a day, but if you had a job, you were in good shape, particularly in the 70s, right? Now you can have as many jobs as you want, so much so that it's hard to hold on to people, particularly in the service industry. We realize that even $15 an hour at McDonald's isn't going to ensure that someone's going to show up to work tomorrow at noon. It just doesn't happen that way. I want you to talk about, coming from a guy who has put his heart out there first a lot in what you do. We mentioned this yesterday. You don't get rich. You don't go, wow, I want to be rich. I think I'm going to open a non-for-profit. that doesn't work. It doesn't work that way.
Unless you're a government nonprofit and you're in Minnesota or Los Angeles, I mean, there's a lot of people making killings there.
There's ways around it. There's certainly a lot of people that have figured that out. They found that little loophole to do that. And they feel really good about themselves doing it because they're like, well, I'm giving my life to Jesus. I'm doing service work, and I'm also making $3 million a year doing it, and I don't have to lay a finger on this paperwork. Talk about how important it is that you're doing something. You're 20, 21 years old. There's nothing in the Bible that says anything about retirement. The Lord says, He wants you to work, and it's important that we do that as long as we possibly can because that's what we're supposed to do. Psalms, may the favor of our Lord, God, rest on us, establish the work of our hands for us, and yes, establish the work of our hands. It's Psalms 90:17, Colossians 3:23-24. Whatever you do, work with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. It's so important, and this is something that I think a lot of people, we all want to do the least amount of work and get the biggest performance, the most response, the biggest outcome. That's not how it works. Hard work never killed anybody. The harder you work at what you do, what your skill is, the better you're going to be at it. I've always told my son, find something you really like that perhaps is a little different, that you really enjoy, and become the best at it, and you'll be just fine. But I cannot tell you enough, and I've told him this a million times, it ain't about the money. And he sees me, he's like, well, Dad, it's about the money for you. I said, well, I'm in a different position. I've worked the same industry for 40-something years, and, I started a new business just several years ago. I'm feeling my way through it. I'm fine. Everything's good. I'm super blessed. I wouldn't have changed a thing. I said, but, man, if you really enjoy what you're doing in your life, it makes life, everything is better. Your marriage is better. Your children are better. Your life is better. Your church is better. I mean, everything is more fulfilling in life when you look up, you get out of bed in the morning, and you really look forward to putting that foot on the floor and starting your day at a job, as opposed to going, oh my gosh, when do I get my pension? When the hell is this hell going to be over for me so I can retire? I mean, I know people in their 40s are like, I got 15 more years. I'm like, really? You want to work that job for 15 more years? Think about what else you could be doing. And all they think about is 63, get my Social Security, get my pension, I'm moving to the beach, and I'm done. But I got 15 more years to go. And I'm like, you want to spend 45 to 60 thinking that way? I don't. And I told you, my son, I was complaining the other day, first world problems, about all my friends who are retiring. And he's like, Dad, you've never worked a day in your life. You've been retired ever since you got into the workforce. And I'm like, he said, if you were retired, what would you be doing? I said, same thing I'm doing now. Probably doing Mission Minded with Michael Coleman, and because I enjoy it, that's what I love doing. And he's like, exactly. So you never worked a day in your life. So just talk a little bit about how important it is, because I think everyone goes out of college. They want to find the highest paying job as quickly as possible, and they want to start building wealth. And by their mid-20s, upper 20s, hopefully married, have a children, have a $3 million home, and be on their way. And life just doesn't work that way, particularly when you're working in a workforce we have now where, jobs are so plentiful. And really, I think now it'd be more fun to go find a job than it certainly was in the 80s, like when you and I were looking for gigs. I mean, you couldn't just create a job for yourself back in our days. You could, but you could not. Now there's so many different possibilities. You can create whatever you want. If you like something, you have a passion for it, go create something. We talked about that yesterday. You brought that up.
Technology has enabled us, has empowered us to make it. Because if you think about it, like I think we touched on it a little bit. If I had, so let's just say I had an Uber idea, or an idea like Uber, I should say. You could say, well, without technology, that doesn't work. I see advertisements all the time for, they call it, I think, last mile service. So you can, because what happens with like Amazon deliveries, and there's so many deliveries. Everybody sends stuff online. So what happens is they have these regional hubs, and then they'll get them to a major city. But that's where it really gets costly to maintain the vehicles and the drivers to actually take it from when it gets to that regional or to that city. So you see these advertisements all the time where they call it last mile service. So, I could take a truck. Well, I've seen people do it in their cars, but I could take a truck, for instance, or a van, and I could go pick up, if I was, contracted with them, and I could pick up 50 packages, drive around, drop them off, take a picture, and that verifies that you dropped them off. All those things, if you just think about how much all of that is technology. Yeah. And it's created a whole different world that we could not even imagine 20 years ago that all of that was possible. I told a story of Mission Minded, I think, a year or so ago. I remember sitting at my desk. I had the first desktop that I had bought, $2,000 at Circuit City for a monitor, a desktop, and a printer. And this was in 1998, I think. And Amazon. It could have been a year after that. It doesn't matter. Amazon had just came out, and the talk was nobody can figure out how you monetize the internet. You can get a website, and that was helpful, where people could find you and all that. But they really just didn't have. And then you started having things like PayPal be invented, which Elon Musk was involved in, and other people. So as technology has come along, now when I had when I had that business, now that was a boutique, it was predominantly historically it was people right there on the interstate. We had to transition to an online boutique. I eventually sold it, but places like Shopify and things like that make it, again, much easier for people can buy something across the country. Yeah. Whereas before, you have what you have in the town you live in. You live in a small town, you're not going to have many resources. Now, there's a pro and con to technology, and because think about it, it's both. You can be hired remotely to do a lot of jobs. I mean, I find it hard to believe that somebody can't, if you will apply yourself and you're not like, oh, I'm only going to work for this amount or this title or whatever. You can get a job, but most of the time you get a job not even leaving your home, because of how many jobs are available just remotely. But keep in mind that works the other way too. That means they don't have to just hire from people who can walk up. They can hire from anywhere in the country to do all that. And so the world the job market and structure has been totally transformed as to what's possible, versus, what it was, when we were coming up. Now, most of the kids, I will tell you, they get that. They're very in tune to technology. Technology is not a challenge for them.
Yeah.
Where the kids of today, though, have a disadvantage over where you and I have an advantage in the job market today are the soft skills. Yeah. And that is such a major differentiator because, you and I know what it is to shake hands and look somebody in the eye. We know that when you're talking to somebody, even if it's on a Zoom or a Google Meet or a Teams meeting, you're supposed to be looking them in the eye. You're supposed to speak confidently. You're supposed to speak respectfully. You're all those kind of things. And kids today, I've interviewed kids. They won't even look at you. They look down the whole time. And
and I don't want to. I want to because I know you're going to go. You're going to go deep on this. I wanted to get into that. Just perfect that you brought to set this up because I want to talk about that's something that you and I are very good at. I've been in this industry for a long time. You've been in the industry where you're constantly asking and raising funds for non-for-profits, so you know exactly what you're talking about. So I think you and I are pretty expert on the skill part of it. By the way, Dallas Teague, who's a friend of the show, she's an expert in business etiquette. She's actually going to be joining the show coming up on Friday at 5:00. She's got an amazing story. She's a minister. She's just an amazing individual. Her husband works down to the Birmingham Jefferson Civic Complex, and they've been well established here in the Birmingham area. A lot of people probably know her name, but anyway, she'll join the show 5:00 on Friday. So I'm gonna let you have the day off, my man. You can start the weekend a little early. I want you to talk about the soft skills. I was hoping. That you're going to have some really good clickbait on this show tonight because you've been so many times on one side of the table interviewing another. You've also been interviewed yourself. You can almost make that argument that you're in that process now, although I think you have more control of where your career path is going than you probably realize. You're going to create something, and you can do that because you do have the expertise. But what are some things that perhaps a 21-year-old who's a master at a computer, fixing to get his education in, say, business engineer, whatever it is, that we just don't think about. We used to think, make sure you're clean, make sure your hair's cut, be clean shaven, don't show your tattoos. If you wear jewelry, probably not a good idea. If you're a woman, don't show too much cleavage. I mean, these were the things like you'd see in Good Housekeeping in the 40s and 50s, I guess, on just being good etiquette. You just brought up the fact, and I can't stress this enough. I tell my son, when you meet somebody for the first time, get a good handshake and eyesight on them because they will remember that. I said, do not look at the floor. Don't look past them. Don't look over their shoulder. And man, make sure you give a good, sturdy handshake. I said, there's nothing worse when you shake hands with somebody and it's like that old rag or you feel like you're going to crush their fingers. I'm telling you, that to me is when someone walks up to me and they assert themselves, they take the first step and their hands on top. And my hands on the bottom, I know I've got something good going here. I know I got somebody that's a go-getter, and it's never failed me. But what are some things you've seen over your years of expertise that maybe was there ever a situation where you had an interview and someone did something that you'd never seen before, and you're like, wow, that was really effective, or that's something that I've never seen before, or maybe how someone followed up an interview. Maybe did they make a phone call? Did they write a letter? Just some different things that perhaps some of these kids that go on dates and they text their day from across the table don't really know much about when it comes to soft skills and what they can use in their business world. If you could share some of that expertise, that'd be awesome. Yeah,
I've probably hired hundreds of people over the years, and and when I started Hope Inspired Ministries, one of the things that I did in trying to help people with barriers to employment, a lot of it were soft skills. And because when you're brought up in an environment, you're overcoming certain challenges. Poverty could be it. It could be you've never seen anybody necessarily get up and go to work all day and come home and don't really understand what that picture looks like or what the expectations are. And so one of the big things, right from the very beginning, it was almost nobody shook my hand properly. And but I found myself, I would tell them, my father told me this growing up, and I didn't really understand. And the truth of the matter is, I still can't for sure 100% put my finger on why it gives me the heebie-jeebies. But if a guy, not as much with a woman, but if a guy shakes my hand with doesn't squeeze my hand, I call it a dead fish.
Yeah.
It's something. It's something that reveals. I mean, right away, they've got a long way to overcome that. I mean, they've got to be really impressive. And
that's a deal breaker in it? I mean, for me. I mean,
it almost is.
If you got 100 people coming in, that's a deal breaker. If it's down to one or two guys, but he ain't making it that far with a handshake like that. I mean, that's how important. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's how important this stuff is, guys and girls out there. That's how important this is.
And you have to remember, not always, but they don't hire entry-level people to do the hiring and firing. So when you're coming in for a job, you're going to meet somebody that's either at a higher HR level or an executive level.
And you may end up working for them.
It may end up working for them. Yeah. And so they've been in business long enough that they have certain expectations. So when you walk in and, you can be Joe Cool on the street all day long, but I've had people who come in. I had a guy come in with light green hair, and and when I talked with him, I still did the interview, and I talked with him, and it's like, yeah, this is the way I like my hair. I think it looks cool. I think it whatever, and I go, great. But kind of off the record, you kind of say, okay, the interview's over. Let me ask you a question. When you're going into a job, do you think it's important to kind of fit into the culture of the job you're looking for? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And you have him look around. I said, well, let me ask you something. You see anybody else around here with not just green hair, but colored hair? Mm-hmm. And he said, no. And I go, okay. So, because if I was not going to hire somebody, but they seem like a decent person, so I think this guy just had no clue whatsoever. Why did he? And he's like, well, why does it matter? Well, because you're going to be at times representing the company to other people, and when you stand out like that, and you may say, well, that's not fair. My hair has nothing to do with it. But it can project things about you that may not be the way the owner of the business or the person in charge wants to represent. Because when I see green hair, for better or for worse, I think, well, this is somebody who doesn't want to follow the norms of their environment. Mm-hmm. Okay? They want to be different, and they're going to do things no matter how different, that they want to do that. So what it doesn't scream to me is this person is interested in coming in and being one of the team, and is interested in being a productive part of the team. And in fairness, that may be a unfair characterization of that person. But what I'm trying to get them to know is, regardless if you're sending a message, you are sending a message to people, and you're making it very easy for them to make judgments and determinations about you that may be totally inaccurate, but when they're the ones that have to make a decision. So if you come in and you have another guy who comes in and he or she is very hygienic, very polite, very and they do very well, and you come in and you're just as qualified, but you look like you don't bathe regularly. I mean, hygiene, mm-hmm. or brush your teeth regularly, or fingernails are dirty, or you're just have an unkempt appearance, all of that is sending a message. And I'm never going to choose, if that's all I've got to choose by, do equal in the interview, I'm going to choose the person who looks better put together.
Yeah. Don't ever be late, too. That's the other thing, is if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late.
That's right.
That's something that's really, really important for me. We leave for church every single Sunday at 7 minutes till 8. It takes 22 minutes to get to church, and my kids are like, why do we always leave early? And I was like, we're not leaving early, we're right on time. I know exactly how long it takes me to walk into church, get on my knees, I get 6 minutes to pray, the church, I know exactly, and if there's an accident, I know we're not going to be, don't ever be late. Then I know some people, that's a killer right there. If you're late, you're not getting the job. Listen, if you're walking into an art studio down in Southside, and you're going to be a tattoo artist, I get it. Look like a parakeet. You have green hair. Do whatever.
Sure.
Read your room. I mean, that's certainly that. Some people are like, well,
you're going to be odd if you aren't covered up in tattoos.
Yeah, and I know these youngsters. Well, that's not fair that I'm being looked upon. Well, you know what? Life ain't fair. I'm here to tell you that's life. If I'm walking down the street and there's a guy on the right side who's clean shaven with a suit walking on the right, and now on the left hand side there's a guy that's got dreads and he's got a hoodie on and I can't see his face. Which side of the street you think I'm walking on? They both may be Christians. They both may be just ministers. They may be great, but this is the real world. We look at people all the time. First impressions are critically important, particularly in the job world. It will make or break you sometimes based on what your first impression is. So read your room and it decides on what your job's going to be. And I would even say, if you're going to go for a job somewhere, stake the place out. If you're going to work for IBM or going to work for a restaurant downtown or whatever, go eat dinner there first. See how the other people dress. See how they get along, because I always like to case a place whenever I speak. If I'm going to speak at a church or I'm going to talk to the FOP or a firefighters convention or whatever, I like to get there a couple of days early and shake some hands, because that's kind of like my first date. They already know me. They know my face. They recognize me. I made that first impression of shaking their hand. And then when I get up there, I can tell them anything and they'll think it's funny or they'll think it's good. Yeah. If you get up there cold, but so they already know me a little bit. And that works for a lot of different things in life, not just your first job.
There's some traditional things that I think still are very important, such as usually you want to dress up for the position you're asking for. So if you say, if you're thinking, hey, I'm going to be working at a warehouse, I'm going to be in jeans and steel-toed boots, but I'm not going to come to work. I'm not going to come to an interview in jeans and steel-toed boots. Mm-hmm. I'm going to come to work. I'm going to come to an interview. I probably wouldn't come in a coat and tie for a warehouse position, but I'm going to come in with probably a jacket or at least a nice button-down shirt, khakis, things like that. Let me go back to the green hair person just for a second.
Yeah,
I can hear people say that's not fair, and just because somebody can do a good handshake doesn't mean they're going to be a good employee. And I will tell you, absolutely, that is 100% true. That is no guarantee, but what that conveys to me, if somebody looks me in the eye, shakes my hand, I don't know anything about them, but they're put together. What I am led to believe is that they come from a decent background and they've had some positive influences in their life that have prepared them for this. And what that translates into more often than not is somebody who is going to much more easily adapt to what we're doing and be able to adjust in a healthy way. So the likelihood of success, percentage-wise, is much higher. It's not guaranteed, but it's much higher than somebody who comes in unkempt, green hair, looks like they haven't, not keeping up hygiene and all that. That person could still come in and be successful.
Yeah, this
but
reminds
me. But I'm going on what odds are, and the odds are this person a male or female, is going to be much more successful in the workforce than this other person. So while that person may not even know about it, he's created, by not being dressed appropriately and looking odd, he's created additional barriers.
Yeah,
that he has to overcome. That's right.
This reminds me of a great analogy I heard before the Masters this past weekend. It was great because Rory was just roaring through, and of course, a lot of people were saying he was choking on day 3. And I said, we play 4 rounds for a reason. He's going to be fine. Of course, he ended up winning his second Masters. But I heard this over and over and over again. You may not win the tournament on the first day, but you sure as hell can lose it.
Yeah.
You post an 81, you're done. You can't win a tournament on 4 days, but you can certainly lose it. And that's what we're trying to tell you here is you can go into a job interview. That handshake may not be enough to get you the job, but that green hair may be enough to kill it before you even get an opportunity to show people what you're all about. Don't make it any more difficult than you have to do. Let me ask you this. We only have a few minutes. This show is just absolutely flown by. I cannot believe it's almost 6 o'clock already. This is Mission Minded, by the way. Keeping your mind in mission in your mind. 941-1011, 941-1011. What is the best way? I've just gone in. I've had an interview process. I thought it went really well. I don't want to smother. I don't want to look like I'm kissing butt. But what's the best way to follow up? I'm brand new. I'm living in 2026. Michael Coleman is my businessman. Tell me what's the best way to follow up my job interview that I thought I just had.
I think the best way is to, you want to address that if possible, and it usually is, because they'll usually say, do you have any questions? You want to address, say, well, thank you. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. And can you tell me what my expectations are in terms of being able to hear about my application? Or something along those lines where you're saying, because, there are jobs that are terrible that will leave you out there, and especially you see this online.
Well, I'm not talking specific. I'm not talking specifically at the meeting itself, but I've just left your room, and then I want to follow up.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You want to know that, but so you if you don't find that, then you don't want to be left out in limbo.
Yeah.
And so I think as soon as you can, you follow up with an email to everybody that's in the interview. Dear Mr. So-and-so or whoever's in charge, you address it to them. I really appreciate you taking the time to interview. I enjoyed getting to learn more about the company and this position. I feel like my skill set, you don't have to oversell yourself, but you can say, I feel like my skill set matches with this, with the job description very well, and I would be honored if given the chance to take on this position. I look forward to learning, or I look forward to hearing from you soon. And what that does is, without saying, hey, when are you going to tell me did I get the job or not, it's conveying manners. Again, you're projecting appreciation and thankfulness. You're not taking anything for granted, no matter how rock solid you are. And it used to be in the day, before they had email, they'd tell you to write a card.
Yeah.
But now today, things move so much quicker. Usually, if you're in, like when we would do hires, the very first thing I do is I'd say, okay, I screen everybody first. So we whittle that down to, let's say if I had 50 applicants for a job, I'd probably screen it down to my top 5, just based on the resumes. And then I would say, okay, then we're going to set up a 30-minute Zoom meeting with each person. If they didn't show up, then we got rid of them there. Or if they couldn't figure out technology, if you can't figure out a Zoom call that we sent you the link to, that all you have to do is click in the link and look at the phone, that's not a good fit either for some of the things we want. So let's say we had 3 that applied, and then you make a determination, and we would invite those in. Maybe it's all 3, or maybe it's only one of those, but we would bring them in and have that conversation with them. And that's, so I said all that to say, you've already made it through. By the time you come in the office, usually you've already been screened through a couple of different ways and made it through. So they're only going to bring in, they're not going to bring in 20 people and actually interview them in person. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So if you've made that final cut where you're in person, you kind of want to know, hey, did I get the job? And I've gotten that email before that said, hey, thank you for applying. We enjoy getting to know you. We think your leadership skills are right on. We just feel like there's another candidate that's a better fit. And that always stings a little. I know it would sting when I would send it, but I know that ultimately people can get closure and move on. And that's really kind of what you're wanting in that. So
I know we're going to get some emails, info@TonyCurryRadio.net, missionmindеdradio@gmail.com. You can leave your emails, questions, 941-1011. I know I'm going to get this question, so I'm going to throw it to you. We can pick it back up tomorrow at 5 o'clock. You have been let go of your position, whether it's ugly or not, but you've been fired from your position, and now you're up for another position, but you know there's something that's going to have to be addressed. What's the best way? And again, I'm asking you with 3 minutes left, so that's not really fair to you.
No, that's all right, because I've been in recent talks with this because this is really fresh on my mind.
Yeah, let's pick it up. That's what we call radio tease. Let's pick that up and pick that up at 5 o'clock. We'll pick up right there because I know a lot of people are like, hey, listen, I want to get this out in the open. Is that the best way to do it? Is it good to address it right away? Or should they have to go find it first and then talk about it? So I want to get into that with you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. I think that would be, that'd be great for our Thursday because I know a lot of us. Here's the deal. Now with social media, believe it or not, that's one of the first things people are going to look at. We haven't even talked about that in this hiring show, which I think has been fantastic. You better clean up your social media because I can tell you right now, the first thing they're going to do is find your social media, find out how many followers you have, and they're going to start looking at posts. And if they see anything that's anti-Semitic, they see anything that's racist, they see anything that's racy, whatever, you're going to have to deal with it, depending again on what job position you're going for. But that's another one of those things where you may not win the job with it, but you sure as heck can lose the job just based on what you post, who you follow. That is super, super important. So, I can't even stress enough how important it is to make sure you go through your social media and clean it up. First of all, you don't want to be on there too much. You don't want to look like you're living on Facebook. That's not a good look, particularly if they can read your post and you're posting at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which is when you're supposed to be working. That is certainly, I think now we're in such damage control with everything in life. And because our lives are out there, because we chose to put them out there, because we chose to let everybody in on our vacation pictures and our big party last night and everything else, all the world's going to know what we're doing. You can't take that stuff back once it's out there.
The bottom line is we used to do that all the time. Yeah. We employers will Facebook stalk you. And I will tell you, and we'll end it on this. I was trying to teach our students at Hope Inspired Ministries that, and so we were trying to prepare them to clean all that stuff up. And there was a young girl, and that she was very much dressed as a man, projected herself as a man, told us very openly when she came in class she was a lesbian. And of course, we try to form relationships. We try to love them like Jesus and open up the hearts and minds to be able to project to them about all that. Well, she was on her Facebook profile picture. She had her arms around her girlfriend with 2 9mm in her hands, crossed. That was her.
And you hired her on the spot for security.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's got to go. You ain't never going to get a job.
Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, we hired a woman. We were doing Kurre and Claypo. We hired a woman to do our social media. I don't know how we found her. And the first email, we got an email from somebody that she didn't like, and she on our site, on our Twitter page, said "F you" in all cap letters, and we fired her that. But I said, "You can't do that. You can't just you're Curry and Claypool. People are gonna." I said, "No, you can't. You can't. That's not the way we're gonna start this thing." All right, thank you, brother. We'll pick it right up. Sounds like we got a show for tomorrow night right here on 101.1 The Truth. God bless.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Curry Radio.